CMMS Radio talks about all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, focused on maintenance management. It's the people, the process, and the culture that make your CMMS journey a success. All right, folks, welcome back to CMMS Radio. You see him on screen, and if you don't, I'm going to tell you who he is. It's Jeff Walkup. He's with Fluid Life, and we're going to get into a little conversation today about what's coming right around the corner. We're talking about Reliable Plant. That's put on by Noria. They do a great job. I've seen Jeff there every year since I started going. This is going to be year number 4, and we always get a chance to chop it up at the show. But this year, I want to make sure you know about 2 things that Jeff is going to be doing at the conference. One, on Monday, there is a workshop. It's 3.5 hours long. And then on Thursday, he's got another session. That one's on leadership. So first of all, Jeff, finally, welcome to CMMS Radio.
Absolutely, brother. Hey, it's a pleasure, Greg. Every time we get together, man, it's like, kicking the tires and lighting fires on an old friend, man.
Yeah. And like I know last year and the year before, we started to talk a lot more, and I just saw you running around. And I know you've had a lot of things happening in the last, several months. The acquisition, you guys were acquired and became part of the bigger umbrella group under Reliability One. We want to get into that. But can you tell me, first of all, a little bit about the workshop that you're going to run at Reliable Plant? And that's on Monday. It's 3.5 hours. Just give a little background so that people know when, what that's about, and why they should attend.
Hey, roger that, man. I definitely appreciate it. Yeah, so that workshop on Monday, it's something that I'm really passionate about and a kindred about. My background as an engineer and having done these things for a long time, we start dating ourselves, right? But typically that 3.5 hour workshop is going to be myself. And then I have 2 of my directors that are both coming there, both fantastic individuals, been with the Fluid Life Corporation. One of them 31 years, the other one 18 years. They're both degreed chemists. So we're not just a bunch of dumb, smart guys, but we actually have some real world experience. We've rolled our hands up a little bit, seen it, done it, and been there. But, the topic's going to be, just simply right off the website, from contamination to corrective action, turning oil analysis into reliability decisions. So 3.5 hours to be able to really talk about something that, as much as we try to change things, there's really nothing new under the sun. It's going back and looking at tried and true principles that we've done, participated in. And when you look at lubrication, the field of tribology, testing, all the analytics, throwing sensors and additional things and widgets here and widgets there, we're really inundated with information to the point of analysis paralysis. But it's not until you decide to choose to do something with it will you ever change. So we'll talk a lot about that in the training, the presentation in and of itself. We'll have a little bit of best case examples. We'll share from real world things that we've done and uncovered before, and have a lot of audience participation. Then we'll break it into groups and allow people to actually see oil analysis reports. Kind of figure out what it means and what it does. Because as much as you ask people, if you, hey, rate yourself 1 to 10, where you're at as being an expert, I'm 8, 10 above. But when you start talking to them, you realize that that's far and few in between, and that's not to discredit anybody or whatever, but people don't know what they don't know until we tell them. So that's part of being able to do it. And that's the first part of the workshop.
So that and what you described there is you're creating an opportunity. So let's say I think I know something, some of the people that I'm really regular with, they're part of my primary crew, they're dear friends, and they really do help get it into my head about, and right here we're talking about this concept of degradation. How do you reduce degradation? And that's through proper lubrication, among other things, right? Precision maintenance and so forth. But, I always want people to know and I think it's obvious, I'm not a reliability professional, but I understand some of the concepts enough to get people thinking about them. And there's a lot to be said to the basics that have never changed, the fundamentals that are not going to change. The technology is great when it's appropriate. It's not so great when it's not appropriate because information without context and it's just piling in. But if someone were to explain to me where I've gotten something wrong, especially in this industry, that's an opportunity. So I got to kind of I got to check my ego and say, I thought I was a 10 and now they just knocked me down to a 5. No, they just created an opportunity for me to go from a 5 to a 6. That's huge. If you ask me, when it comes to moving right. So that's the first part of the workshop. But then what happens after that?
You betcha. So when we get inside the workshop there, not only are we going to, I always talk about having an explanation, a demonstration, and a practical application. And I typically, I enjoy speaking. I enjoy being out there with the people. And 9 times out of 10, the answers are in the room. They're amongst the people that are attending. And folks that would come to the Reliable plant, I've been involved with NORIA going back into the early 2000s. I've been a huge advocate back then. I've known the people for a long time. I cut my teeth on a lot of that. In mechanical engineering programs, they don't necessarily teach tribology and lubrication in school. They kind of leave that to the vendors and the OEMs and whatnot. And it's neither here nor there, but we can build a solid case about people have an agenda, if you will. You know, buy oil from me, buy more oil from me, buy filters from me, buy more filters from me, buy more parts from me, buy additional parts. We want it to last a nanosecond after warranty is over, then fail and buy more. So just the insanity. I think it was Einstein that said doing the same old thing the same old way, expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. And last time I checked, he was a pretty sharp guy. So in that, I also bring out this way. I always tell people, be humble, be teachable, and be curious. And I say that for myself because we can learn from anybody, Greg. Just conversations that you and I have had, just shooting the breeze, cup of coffee at a conference, talking about things. What are the trends? What are people asking about? And then to have the opportunity to share those stories, albeit a fancy case study or just things that have happened or experienced. In my career, having worked as an end user, years and years before I was a vendor, now that I am a vendor, you hate them, right? But you understand what it was. But as an end user, actually building an in-house NDT group, on-site oil analysis with the latest and greatest, bringing in vibration, thermography, acoustic emissions, all those things, turning it into a cost center, being able to speed it up. So we'll use a lot of the experience that we've also learned. And then being a company like Fluid Life, albeit the acquisition and stuff, if you will, we've been around 45 plus years. So we have millions and millions of oil samples. We have coolant samples, grease samples that we can benchmark from, we can trend. And to be able to take that, to go from that diagnostics world to that prognostics world where you can future prevent, and it ties in with all the additional testing that we do. And then, the sister organizations that we're working with, we can add what they do well. And it's truly a turnkey opportunity that brings, a real powerhouse to get there and provide something, simplify the number of software databases that you have to go into, log into, use. Just think, Greg, about the number in a world when we want to work smarter, not harder. How much time does an individual, let alone the entire team, go in and log into this database and log into this database, where you could come
Oh,
back at the end of the day, bring a spreadsheet, and it turns out to be 2.5 weeks lost logging into databases that you maybe only need one. So just being able to talk about some of those things, and then we'll have some explanations that we'll talk about, we'll share with people, and then to break it down into people and say, now you've been kind of instructed in this during this workshop. Let's look at 4 or 5 different things. Tell us what you see. Where do you think it's coming from? What would you do about it? And then hold people accountable to actions. Got all the information in the world. Then if it just sits there on a technology and a good idea fairy pile and doesn't move to being able to increase efficiency, increase uptime, reduce downtime, mean time between failure, all the mean time between repairs, all those things that make the economic purchasers happy. We've discovered as we're dealing with people out there, the rules have really changed. You get anywhere from 8 to 12 people in an economic decision to buy something. So you've got the people on the floor, you've got management, middle level management, C-level management, and then you've got the forensic purchasing team that want to go in and look at everything that we're trying to do and check it off, say, no, you don't need that. Bare bones, bottom line, give me a Yugo.
this so all these concepts are the common string that kind of tie us all together, whether we're end users,
Right.
vendors. And I actually think the vendors that understand and seek to understand and deliver for their clients, those are the ones that are not despised. They're kind of, oh man, it's the vendor doing the vendor thing. That's the thing that makes a difference. And we do get in traps when we're providers where Revenue's there and we have to protect that revenue because we have an operation, but clients king. And when you do it that way and you break down those barriers and say, hey, how can we really help? That's what I'm always preaching about or chirping about, whatever you want to call it, because it's possible. You might make a little bit less profit, but you might make that profit for a much longer time because you're not just creating a symbiotic relationship, oh, we want to be sticky, but you're saying we can solve problems that are real problems for this client. And as long as that continues and they're thriving and receiving and realizing value, that's not just ROI, people. The value happens in a lot of different ways, moving better, faster. And something else you mentioned was accountability. I think we human beings love accountability when it makes sense. We do not like accountability when it's nonsensical, top down, and you talk about the budget people.
Right.
They see red because that's part of their job as it relates to creating more profit. However, I learned something. I think it was this week. It might have been last week. Really good friend of mine, Alex Bolin. He's over at Digital Thinker. He's talking about the concept of the invisible balance sheet, where organizations they really need to start seeing what's behind the numbers, because there's incredible amounts of money that are being left on the table as opportunities. And an unknowing CFO, which, look, they're not just being jerks. They don't know. They're doing what they do at that level, right?
They
Um,
mean well,
those
but
are
they don't understand necessarily all the things. Data without context.
correct. And they're doing their job and they don't necessarily know what they don't know. And that's not a dig on them. We're just trying to find ways to improve it. It's almost like we want like a little sign on their wall. Be careful when you cut anything in the maintenance department because it's going to cost you way more than you can see on the balance sheet right now.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, I get it. But it's a thing. So we keep harping on it. What about the other workshop? Because a lot of these things that we're talking about right now that we've talked about in the past, when a maintenance department isn't necessarily moving well, they're not empowered, they don't have the right kind of things coming in, they kill a reliability program once it's successful. They're like, yep, we got that problem solved, when we all know that's an ongoing thing.
Hmm.
Leadership. I think leadership bears the brunt of the responsibility at various levels, including our own ability to self-lead. Tell me about your session on leadership that's happening at Reliable Plant.
Oh, absolutely, brother. Thank you so much for that. Leadership, I think everything in life revolves around it. And leadership literally it's about influence. You know what I mean? Big difference between being a leader and being a manager. And just pause on that a minute because, there's some real nuggets in that and it'll preach. A manager, somebody, and again, this isn't to disparage or criticize anybody, but it's more about narrative ideology. It's about style. A manager checks off box, check troops, does this, order supplies, boom, boom. We're a leader providing that influence, right? And you can lead at any position in an organization. You can be at the head of the food chain. You can be at the bottom because, again, about influence, right? So from the bottom down. And a person who says they're a leader but doesn't have anybody following them, that's kind of like a hiker, and you go hiking by yourself, and then you look back behind you and there's nobody following you, right? So leadership is legacy and it's about ongoing. And I think it's one of the most powerful things that can be done. It really doesn't cost a lot of time or money or effort. It takes a willingness for somebody to step up to the plate and say, if not me, then who? And I look at people that were mentors in my life, whether it be coming up through the military, college, growing up, in my father's own industry where I got involved in all this, but about being able to lead and setting the example. So the program, the session that I'll be doing is typically about, in the field of play, about building winnable teams. And I use some comparatives based upon, I'll make you have to come and listen. I won't give the keys to the kingdom, you know what I mean? But make it where people look at it as high performance sports teams, or if you even look at high performing, high trust individuals, how you can take things and you can move it and you can really change it because you're trying to move the thing. And you said something earlier about time. When we speak to people, we get involved with customers, coworkers, partnerships, vendorships, whatever that is. Time is the killer of all deals. And time is also something of all the things we can save in bank, you can save money, you can save artwork. If you're a hunter or fisherman, you can save gun collection, cars, whatever. But time, tick, 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 tick. We have 24 hours in a day, and we can't bank it for tomorrow. Literally, tomorrow is a day found on a fool's calendar. We don't necessarily have it, right? So being able to focus on what we can do today and being able to do a couple, two or three things that moves the call to action, if you will, that allows us to get something done. Or again, we don't want these things when it comes to leadership, workshops, technology, or whatever, to language on that good idea or the good idea fairy pile, the technology pile that's neat to have, but it doesn't do anything. As an example, I'm working with customers now that I worked with 20 years ago and even longer. And every 18 months, every 3 years, a whole new genre of people are going to come. People get hired, they get fired, they get replaced, they retire, whatever the case. They go to work for brand X. So you're always going to be able to cast that message again and over. So some customers that I work with now, that we were doing things with them 20 years ago, that now it's just dawning on them like, what a novel idea would be to filter this oil when it comes in on a PM, filter it for the duration of the PM, take an oil sample before and an oil sample after to determine the effectiveness of it. And you look at them, and you think, voila, did you just think of that? Those kind of things have been around a long time. But with
Yeah.
leaders, it's about being able to, and almost, my friend, and you know me enough by now, to kind of borderline on a little bit of confidence and arrogance, having domain knowledge and having been there and done it, and also to look at failure, for example. Many people don't want to talk about failures, because it shows an inadequacy or an inefficiency or whatever. I say this: failures don't define us; they refine us. And anybody that's never failed at anything, they've taken the safe road. They've never done anything that stretched them or required them to think outside the box to be able to move the needle. And that's where some of the best growth is, that willing to take a risk. So in that session, I'll talk a lot about the culture of leadership, about if there isn't a leadership program, if nobody's the leader there in the organization, then you be the leader. You be the one, because you're going to be able to see that people have ideas, people have thoughts, but a good leader will give his people a covering. He will say, I told you to do this. He or she will take a heat round for you if it goes south. They will give you credit for things you may not necessarily do. At the end of the day, when you build that culture in that environment, mark my word, I believe this is just as much as I'm sitting here with you, is that people will walk over coals for you. They will make you look like a genius. You brought in people that are smarter than you. You equipped them, you empowered them, and you influenced them, gave them some autonomy to run with it. And I've seen that happen multiple times. I could count stories one by one of what we did and how it changed the cost of the spare parts in our warehouse, our inventory, the attitude that people thought about when they were working on their equipment, just the whole countenance when they walked in the room.
Yeah. No, this is, we don't want to, you mentioned it earlier, giving away the keys to the castle, right? We want people to go to these things. And the other thing, folks, anybody that hasn't signed up to attend, registered to attend, I just want to shout out, you can go to conference.reliableplant.com. And when you go to sign up, that pricing that's up there now, it's about to sell out and close out. Use the code CMMS10 and you get 10% off. That's an exclusive discount, because I want people to go. I want them to attend your session. I want them to go to my stuff too, and a bunch of my friends. I mean, Ramesh Galati is going to be there. I can't shout everybody out, but the other thing is, if you're at Reliable Plant and you see Jeff, whether he's walking in the booth, whatever it is, he'll take time and talk to you, or he'll take time and say, hey, I'm on the way to this. Give me your number real quick. I'm going to hit you up later. Because that happened with us. And we finally got you on CMMS radio. I cannot wait to see you in Reno. I've never been to Reno, so that's going to be kind of cool, I think. And
good time out there. The things that they're doing, I know that I talked to, again, my colleagues over at Nori and Mobius, fantastic people, very proactive on doing a lot of things. I mean, they literally will fall over themselves to try to help you. Fantastic folks. they've set up a lot of really good things that are there. But Greg, just to what you said too, I believe that everything in life starts off with a conversation or a chance encounter. If you meet somebody in the hall, in the elevator, you're going somewhere, if we take time and we can learn from one another, be willing to share, impart things to people, just to be able to encourage things about, I've had people came up to me and said, I met you 3-4 years ago, whatever the case might be, or I worked with you. I was a junior guy just working an outfit. You said this to me and they remembered it. Years later, they come back and say, hey, thank you. Thank you for taking the time on me. Oh,
That's
by
right.
the way, I'm such and such person here. I sign the checks around here that pay for programs, and I'm willing to go with something that I know that is moral, high value, character, integral.
Yeah. And that's, I think you're the kind of individual where if somebody's having an issue or it wasn't quite what they thought, that they can hit you up right away. So I appreciate that as well. And, there it is. Now, there's one thing you have to suffer through because it's your first time on CMMS radio. I don't know if you know what it is, but we're going to do it right now. It's called the fun question segment. That's how we're going to close this show. You ready?
I'm ready.
No wrong answers here. Just fire at will. What's your favorite music?
My favorite music, I grew up in the 70s, so I love me some Fleetwood Mac. I love Eagles. Can't go wrong with that.
Good stuff. What is your favorite sport or hobby? And on sport, it doesn't have to be one that you play or played. It could be one you like to cheer for and follow.
Absolutely. I love football with a passion. I'm a season ticket holder, Denver Broncos. Things that I like to do. I'm a competitive shooter. I like to shoot.
Nice.
Lift weights.
Nice. Yeah, it's good stuff. Now, here's the big one. No wrong answers. What is your philosophy, perspective? Is it even a thing when it comes to this concept of work-life balance?
Absolutely. I think, with the work-life balance, especially as we get a little bit older and stuff like that, we look at things a little bit. I was saying to my wife not too long ago, when a man, speaking to myself, when I'm 20, man, we're wide-eyed and bushy-tailed. We're running after, we're trying to set our mark. When we're 30, we're kind of trying to figure it out a little bit better on and on. When we're 40, if we're not the vice president of some place, we kind of failed. When we're 50, like we've kind of arrived. When we're 60, when we start looking at that twilight, we want to finish strong. We can look back on our career, and I think we're more apt to be able to share more things than we were to try to hold it back in. And For me, I want every place that I go into in that work-life balance. I want to know that I've worked hard. I've done some good things. I've made the place and I've made people better by just having an encounter with me, and literally want to work myself out of a job so that other people are here and they can say, thank you for what you've done. We can go on, and then what good does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose our soul or lose our family? So work hard, get it while you can. And then at the same time, be able to sit back, like I shared with you before we went online, not only to smell the coffee, make the coffee, but drink the coffee with somebody while you still can. And lastly, I would say this, Greg. I've been to a lot of funerals. I've spoken at a bunch of them too. And we always go there and we tell people what great people they are after they're gone. And I paused for a moment. I said, nope, I'm going to tell people, hey, bud, I appreciate you. Hey, my friend, thank you. Appreciate what you did to me, spoke into my life, when they can hear it and still be blessed.
Yep. That stuff matters, man. That's why I say there's no wrong answers. People can learn from you, get inspired. They could say, I don't agree with that. I think I should chase money until I'm 62 or whatever. There's no wrong answers. Different strokes for different folks. And Jeff Walkup, I appreciate you being on CMMS Radio finally, and I will see you at Reliable Plant 2026 in Reno real soon.
Brother. Coming in on that Sunday. We'll be there till Friday. So appreciate you. Likewise, my friend.
You got it, man.
All right.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit cmmsradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.